You are listening to WPPM LP Philadelphia, 106.5 FM in the city of brotherly love, and you're listening to the What's Next radio show here on WPPM. And, of course, for our podcast listeners, as always, this is Ray's Latino Talk podcast.
Yes, and you can listen to What's Next at 106.5 FM here in Philadelphia and from anywhere at phillycam.org. Listen in and tune in app. And you can download Ray's Latino Talk podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, or anywhere you can. Just download the podcast, guys. And you can look at us on Facebook and see what we're doing behind the scenes. I mean, you guys get, the nitty gritty and all the behind the scenes. It's like backstage. It's exclusive. So come on, check us out.
That's right. And support the movement. Subscribe to the show. Anywhere you can download a podcast. And let people know where you can hear this on Spotify. I mean, iHeartRadio. I mean, anywhere you download and listen to a podcast, Google Play, besides, of course, the obvious iTunes, Stitcher, and all these other platforms, you can hear the audio on YouTube. So there's no excuse not to download and subscribe, and we can appreciate the love. Let people know they can find us on social media, Yaya.
Yes, again, you can find me personally at Yaya_Rivera_ on all platforms. You can follow Ray on Twitter at Ray's Podcast and on Instagram on Ray's Latino Talk.
Gotta love our people on IG.
How about it?
You can email us, podcastrays@gmail.com. Yeah, I see on the line, Christina Vega.
Hey, Christina.
At 7:30, we have a very special announcement of how we're going to support you. So Make sure you watch for the next 35 minutes at least. We're going to be stacking 20s for you. Ibelis Martinez, a future guest. I'm going to be doing an interview with her very soon. There's a lot going on here on Ray's Talk Show. And of course, What's Next on WPPM. And, of course, would love to reintroduce my co-host. She's back, Yashira Rivera.
I'm back.
Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Rafael. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm pumped. I had so much fun the first several times that we did this, and I was kind of bummed I couldn't come the past couple weeks. But I'm here, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm ready to get on some hot topics and discuss to each other and to our listeners.
No question about yeah. For our Phils fans out there and our baseball nerds, they'll get this analogy. Some were speculating I was getting Manny Machado'd, which is, a great Latino baseball player sort of teasing the Phillies. I'll sign here. I might sign here. I might sign with San Diego. So there was definitely some conversation. And my wife kind of broke it down. She goes, I don't know if she's coming back. You talk too much. So I've made a commitment to make sure that Yaya gets her say. We always have to let the women in our lives speak. I've learned that lesson over the years, no question about that. But my wife has offered Yaya.
Yeah.
She said, Yaya is now going to get a glimpse of my life, of the very chatty partner that I have. So she's offered to be in a support group with you, to make sure that you have a chance to say what you have to say. But all jokes aside, Yaya, we're so happy to have you back. You bring so much to the show.
Thank you.
It is, I think, very appropriate that you come back for our first episode during Black History Month.
Which is exciting.
Very exciting.
Yes. Which isn't just, it isn't just African American History Month. It's also Latinx in a way History Month because we have so much African roots. I mean, for those of you looking on Facebook and those that listen on there, I mean, I have pelo rizado. I mean, come on. That's 100% my African roots. I'm going to claim that. And my complexion and my physical features. So, I mean, too often in the Latinx culture, we don't always embrace our Africano roots, but I think it's important that we do. And why not start it here on Ray's Talk Show?
That's right. No, it's a very important time, and I wanted to get Yaya's take on, I think there's a couple of elements to this, right? Because, and I do want to get back to the conversation about sort of the Afro-Latinidad in our community and how we celebrate that. But I want to take it back to the African-American community for a second because, I'm a Philly Rican through and through. And, I very much grew up as much, if not more so, certainly statistically and demographically in an African-American community as much as a Latino community. And, on a very personal level, the Black community, even getting beyond, some of the cultural ties, but, just did so much for me and my family. Without the civil rights movement, without the activism of people like Georgie Woods, the Girard College movement, there's a lot of historical names I could talk about, Dr. Leon Sullivan, so many people in this community, they were the people that really broke open the doors and some of those glass ceilings for people like my parents to get city jobs and work and be able to achieve their American dream. So I think I want to start with just living in gratefulness for what the black community in this country has done for us as Latinos, but also as on a personal level.
And in so many beautiful ways. I feel like, unfortunately, there's so many stigmas, but, there's always that phrase, black is beautiful. I mean, I can't argue that, because it is. Black lives matter. That's another thing, because they do matter, and they're being underrepresented and oppressed in so many ways. So, I mean, I can go on forever. Culture, hip-hop, music, dance, food, everything. I mean, I'm so proud to be a part of the African descent, and being a part, in a sense, in that community. So I've always been, in my later years, proud. And I'm excited to, be a part of such a movement, because I feel like now people are really starting to understand the importance of Black History Month and trying to make it Black History Year.
That's right.
A Black History lifestyle. It's not just for a couple days. And it's like the shortest month.
Yeah,
it's like the shortest.
At least
month.
they gave the black community like a full month. They give us like in between, we overlap mid-September to mid-October. And I know my Latinophiles. Well, that's because there was all these independence movements in those countries. I understand that, but it is kind of ironic that they sort of gave us a, split season kind of thing. But if someone's listening to this or watching this on Facebook Live, either on the radio show here at WPPM or as a podcast, and what would be your advice to them in terms of how to celebrate? Let's say they're Latinx, for example, and what should they be thinking about, and what's a productive way of using this time to celebrate Black History Month?
I think acknowledgement, advocacy, knowledge, literature, music, film. I mean, just pretty much put yourself in that whole realm of things. There's like James Baldwin, W.E.B. Du Bois, a more recent person who his name just drew a blank, and this is going to kill me because I just met him, the director of Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk. I just met him. This is going to kill me.
Yeah.
I will be sure to post this on my social media. He did a new book, not a new book, but a film on James Baldwin, and, music and hip hop and rap and cuisine. And there's so many ways that you can learn about the African American culture that, isn't taught properly in schools. I mean, through my experience, I don't feel that a lot of historical things that happened within the African American communities were actually portrayed correctly. So I think it's important to, completely put yourself in there, eat it, breathe it, smell it, listen to it, eat it. I don't know. That's kind of how I handle Black History Month.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of who's a new author or director or politician or people that affect my life on a daily basis. Just learn.
That's right.
I love advocacy. Just learn. Figure out ways to kind of put yourself in a position to learn more. That's my advice.
That's really good advice, because the other thing I'd like to share with people based off that, and I love this concept of consuming content and to understand from a historical perspective the Black experience in this country, because it is not just Black history, it's our history. And we talk about what's going on in Virginia and the blackface controversies. It really speaks to this sort of separation that many people feel about sort of marginalizing Black culture.
Yeah.
And even how people that don't think they're ill-intentioned, co-opting things like the blank lives matter, branding. And on so many levels, part of the reason these elected officials, now there's two now in Virginia that said that they casually were using blackface in the 80s, is part of their excuses we thought on some level, especially Mark Herring, the Attorney General, who was apparently portraying Curtis Blow at a talent show. We thought we were honoring Black people by doing this or mimicking them, and just not understanding the context. But I think whether it's reading someone like understanding that we're living it now and we're dealing with these political struggles, identity struggles, we're making progress, of course, particularly in the Latinx community, but reading people like Ta-Nehisi Coates or following what, many of our other academics and scholars that are on top of these issues. Arturo Schomburg, many people would know, it was the founder and really the pioneer of the Black History Museum in New York, a Puerto Rican. So there's so many ties. And I think sort of understanding that it's not only, regardless of how you identify personally, ethnically, racially, is that Black history and the African history of Latin America is part of all of our histories.
No, absolutely. And I just want to quickly correct myself. The director of that film, Oscar-winning director, is Barry Jenkins. I just needed a quick second to say that. And I just want to say, Ray, your point is so important that, our history is in so many ways intertwined. and it's important to understand that. But I think, there's so many beautiful things about this month, and to be honest, I feel that it should be as long as a year. And I feel that the way that we celebrate it and do it that way is by continuing to push ourselves in our personal life and professional life to figure out ways to make, Black and brown people inclusive in all the conversations.
That's right.
That's where I find it to be important.
And it is definitely a time also, in particular, amongst many things, to celebrate some of the accomplishments of the Afro-Latino community and those populations. I want to shout out one of my great friends, Charlie Ramos Jr., that has been sharing lists and names of pioneers of great Afro-Boricuas. So throughout the show, we'll mention some of those folks. And we certainly want to honor everything that makes us who we are. And I think that's such a thing that's missing, particularly for Latinos that were raised in this country, because our history and our culture has very much been taken out of, has not been part of the education system, has not been encouraged. We're seeing that in the modern day with our political conversation, even people like Tom Brokaw, none thinking that we just arrived here and not part of this country, not part of the American fabric.
Like 15 minutes ago,
Exactly. So, we have to promote that. We have to stand up for our own culture, and particularly the rich Afro-Latino portion of that history. And you're listening to Ray's Talk Show, What's Next radio program. Yaya, when we get back, we got to talk about this nonsense in Virginia.
Nonsense.
And maybe a little bit about that State of the Union. I'm sure people have our thoughts on it. A lot going on today. Later in the show, we're going to talk about stacking 20s. Got an exciting announcement related to that segment of the show. And a lot going on. I think Yaya is going to talk a little bit about Demi and 21 Savage. That's going to be an interesting conversation.
It's messy.
Bien messy. Okay, so we're just going to pause here, make sure that the recording's going okay for our Facebook family, and we'll be right back.
Sponsored by Youth Testify, a program of the National Network of Abortion Funds and Advocates for Youth. Young leaders in the Youth Testify program are sharing their abortion stories to show why it's important for them to have access to abortion care when they need it. Young folks face challenges when trying to get an abortion. They have to get permission from a judge or guardian, miss school or work for multiple appointments, and raise hundreds of dollars to pay for it. Young people need control over their lives. They need control over their bodies and futures. That's why they're leading the fight for abortion access. For more information, visit youthtestify.org to learn more. Again, youthtestify.org.
Thank you so much, Youth Testify. Again, check out youthtestify.org, see how they're standing up for the rights of young people. And thank you for their sponsorship throughout the last several shows of this segment of Ray's Talk Show and What's Next on WPPM. And again, thank you for joining again, WPPM LP Philadelphia, 106.5 FM, people-powered media, my favorite hashtag. Yaya, this is FM Radio Philadelphia. It's big-time stuff. And we have such through the graciousness of our executive producer and the director of programming here, Vanessa Maria Graber, to be able to share this quality information, not only with our global audience as a podcast, but our local audience here in Philadelphia.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa, and of course the family at Philly Camp for having us. It has been a remarkable experience, and I'm just so pumped to be here. And I have to keep reminding myself to introduce myself. This is Yaya Rivera coming at ya.
That's right, from the Campo of Lebanon, PA. Got a lot of flavor up there. A lot of flavor up there.
So we're here. We're just in Philadelphia. I mean, the weather has been crazy. Tell me about it, right?
Yeah, global warming is a thing. No question about that. But and again, we're going to have a special announcement related to Christina Vega's project and the work we're going to be doing to support her in the Stacking 20 segment of the show. But right now, I really wanted to get to some of the news headlines. And Yaya, as you know, the Virginia's just a mess. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam has come under fire for someone wearing. Because someone was wearing blackface and another gentleman was wearing a Klansman outfit on his medical school yearbook page. He initially said he was in that picture. Now he's denying it.
He wasn't.
But he did admit he wore blackface during Michael Jackson impersonation in the 80s and actually looked like he was going to moonwalk during the press conference until his wife clapped him back. It was a Latino journalist that asked him that question. CBS News' Ed O'Keefe was one of my homies, and I tweeted at him and said, how did you, kind of a random question that ended up being the spotlight. So respect Ed. But despite basically every Democrat in the country calling him to resign, he's remain in office. I guess, my first question to you is, what was your personal reaction? I mean, the fact that we're still having to combat blackface and the lack of understanding by people that are doctors in this country, people that are
doctors,
governors. It's very disconcerting.
I mean, at this point, why haven't we figured out? Like, I mean, it's really, we're not talking about people who are uneducated or people who don't have access to the internet. We're talking about politicians.
Governors,
people in high places.
In diverse states. He's from the VA.
Yeah, I know.
This is Timberland. States. This is Pharrell, Missy, AI, Michael Vick's state. I mean, he's not from North Dakota. No. Not that it would be an excuse, but it's not like he's never met a black person.
No, true. And what's really, I mean, I'm not trying to laugh at the issue.
He's Lieutenant Governor's black.
You're making me laugh. Stop. No, this is a really serious topic because, the news anchor, was it Megyn Kelly? Yes, who, had.
Oh my gosh, she's the worst, isn't she?
No, I mean, she doesn't work there anymore, but I mean, the fact that was like the straw that broke the camel's back about her, defending blackface. I mean, this is completely unacceptable. If you're not black or a person of color, or in general, even if you are, there's no reason why you should be doing something that's almost like a mockery to the culture. I mean, the history of blackface to begin with isn't positive. Like, it's not. And it's so unacceptable. It's unacceptable that some people still try to justify it. It's unacceptable that they don't know what's wrong with it. Like, oh, he was young and stupid. But it's like, why are certain people in certain places held to a certain standard when other people aren't? I mean, that's where I really struggle with it, especially when it comes to our president. People, when they say, oh, well, you shouldn't be worried about what he says. It's just locker room talk. It's like, no, he's the president of the United States. He needs to be held to that
matter.
standard.
That's right. Leadership matters.
And when you see these people wearing blackface, and it's like, why are we still doing it? Like, honestly, like, that's the one thing I don't understand. Like, I knew since I've been a child that was unacceptable over morality and common sense. Like, it's a mess. Teachers resigning, like, politicians resigning. It's like, come on, guys. And the fact that he's in a picture or may not be in a picture with a Klan member and he's a politician, that's also problematic. And it's I don't know. There's a couple of things I want to say on this. One is that and you just touched on it, just from like basic common courtesy, human dignity. Yeah. I was a small kid in the mid 80s, but I wasn't a baby. I remember the world. And I remember blackface wasn't cool in the 80s. I mean, we were already sort of, we have a long way to go to race. That was something I thought of in the 80s. That was something of another time. Like when I thought about the last time it was socially accepted, like 30s, 40s, we're talking about way, way back. And I encourage you to read the history. It really dates back to the 19th century, but in terms of like when it started being, I mean, we knew way before the 80s that wasn't cool. And going back to your point about it's kind of common sense and thinking about this concept of privilege. And one of the things I've been thinking about is how do we speak about this stuff in a way that in a language that we can build some understanding, because we're running into a lot of defensive-ness from these elected people that should know better. And it's puzzling to me because, if I know, and I knew at 8, 9 years old, I certainly knew if I was a grad student or someone in medical school in their mid to late 20s, that jumping in a wheelchair pretending I was disabled would not be funny. No, it's not funny.
So I just don't understand, because on some level, it does seem like there's really this ignorance from these people that they really didn't understand that it wasn't funny. So, Yaya, the language of talking about this in terms of privilege, in terms of bridging this racial understanding, the more and more I'm probing and I'm searching for answers, but it's really difficult because we're really like, and it came out in the State of the Union too, in a way, because like we're living in just two different worlds in many ways in terms of how we think about these things.
We are. I mean, at the end of the day, like the solution to this problem is don't do it. Like that's the solution. Like so many people are like, oh my God, what's the solution? What are we going to do? Don't do it. Like, don't do it. Don't accept it. Don't tolerate it. If you see somebody do them, check them at the door. I think a lot of the times in certain communities, it's very challenging for those who feel uncomfortable, who witness those things, to speak out, because that too isn't easy to check somebody at the door like, oh, you're wearing blackface, bye. Not everybody has that courage, because it can lose them a job or an opportunity, or there's selfish reasons and for some right reasons to do so.
Well, I mean, think about all those people. I think about all the people that are working for ICE right now. Yeah. That probably can't live with themselves with some of the stuff they've been forced to do, and on some level, I feel for them, but leadership takes a lot of courage and a lot of sacrifice. It
does, and I think we need to get, let's just all agree that it's unacceptable and stop having this conversation.
Yeah, and the other part of it I think about, because, and I'm trying to think of another example, but whether it's the AD community or the LGBT community, if there was a community that I didn't identify with, and if someone alerted to me that something was effed up I was doing, I would actually thank them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I was like, well, I didn't realize that. I certainly don't want to offend anybody. And the thing that's so frustrating, I go back to the Megyn Kelly piece that you talked about. What's so frustrating is that there's this defensiveness, like, well, like my interest in doing this casual thing is more important than your feelings, and that's where I wish we had better language and more language to talk about it, but this sense of entitlement, this sense of privilege.
I think it's 100% entitlement. Because maybe we should ask someone that has worn blackface. I mean, is that a solution? Like, hey, what were you thinking when you put blackface on? Like, what was going through your mind?
Well, their answer's been like it was like funny or entertaining, and it's like,
what's entertaining and funny about mocking the color of somebody's skin?
Exactly.
I mean, to me personally, as being a person of color, I don't think it's flattering. It's not a joke. It's not funny.
I was at a Sixer game. Maybe somebody watching this can answer this question. I was so curious because I was with my brother Mario, my youngest brother Mario Collazo. I have two brothers. Shout out to him, he hooked me up with the ticket. We were at the last Sixers Pelicans game about 2 months ago, and it was we didn't realize, but there was all these people that were obviously not of Indian or South Asian descent wearing Hindu turbans, and so it was like, but it turns out it was like Indian American Heritage Night, so they were giving them out. And so we were like, is this cool? Like,
I don't think that's cool.
I don't think that's cool, but there was Indian Americans around. We were curious to even ask him, like, is this cool? But, like, I would imagine a sports team that's relatively progressive would have kind of checked on that. But the fact that I was very cognizant, I certainly wouldn't have done it, but I was very cognizant and sensitive to the feelings of our Indian American brothers and sisters that were there because I honestly just wasn't sure. And so on those circumstances, like, we need to be cognizant of those flags. And honestly, just inquire and don't make assumptions because it feels good to you or you think it's funny, or you think it's cool. It's not about you.
It's not about you. And I feel
you know what I mean?
I feel that too often people really take humanity out of basic social issues. I mean, just treat people the way you want to be treated. Let's say that you have a disorder or disability or, just based off of your physical appearance, would you think it's cool if somebody, did that to portray you without your permission? I mean, I don't think you feel great about it. So, I feel like the solution or the end to this day and this topic would be don't do blackface. B, it's been unacceptable. C, it's been unacceptable for a very long time.
That's right.
And just treat others the way you want to be treated. Like I feel like a mom or like a kindergarten kid. Like, come on,
That's
kids,
right.
like be nice, but like. For real. Stop wearing blackface, and if you do, take accountability, which on his part he did. And it's like, okay, apologize, all right? We can change and go for the future. But is that somebody you want to be your politician? That's what we have to think.
Lack of understanding. That's right.
So
that's right. And and again, to wrap up this segment, to go back to your point that we need to listen more to each other.
Yeah,
going back to the Tom Brokaw comments, and the corporate media and his liberal elites and the journalistic elites and kind of the power structure, was very defensive, and it was about defending him and this good guy. And I'm sure he's a good guy. And he's a legendary journalist and all that stuff. But there was such a lack of interest in listening to why we were being offended and wanting to understand more about the history and understand why the comments resonated so badly.
The comments in regards to assimilation?
With 55 million Americans, not a small thing, not a small part of your audience, not a small part of our fabric of our country. So, so I think this concept of listening to each other and instead of getting defensive and instead of thinking you know it all, being, taking that extra effort, particularly through Black History Month and quickly with the politics of it. I mean, Virginia's in a S storm. Northam's refusing to resign.
Yeah.
The lieutenant governor, who generally is considered sort of a rising star in national politics, Mr. Justin Fairfax, is being accused of sexual assault by college professor Vanessa Tyson at the 2000 Democratic National Convention. I was actually at the convention as an activist. And so we obviously want to provide her every opportunity to have her say.
Absolutely.
And not make presumptions and be very respectful of her moment here to speak up. And then, of course, the third in line for this job, Attorney General Mark Herring, has also admitted he did blackface. It is a total mess in Virginia. We have a wonderful community down there, a very significant growing Latino community who's also very concerned about this, large immigrant population that's in solidarity with the Black community on this issue. So bottom line is, for the governor, you can't lead if no one's following you.
Correct.
And you can't be a Democratic leader. You certainly can't be the Democratic governor of Virginia without the Black community, the Black political leadership, the Black vote. So if they've walked away, it's time for you to walk away. So you're listening to Ray's Talk Show, WPPM. What's next? When we come back, Yaya, we're going to stack 20s. Do it for a good cause. We'll be right back. You're listening to WPPM LP Philadelphia, 106.5 FM in the city that loves you back, Philadelphia. Thank you so much for joining us. And you're listening to the What's Next program here on WPPM LP People Powered Media. Hashtag People Powered Media. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your host, Ray Collazo, and my guest host with the mostest, Yashira Yaya Rivera.
That's right, Yaya Rivera, back at you.
Don't they make hostess up where you're from? That's right. No, that's Hershey, where you're from.
Hershey. No. I'm like next to Hershey. I'm like close to Hershey, but not the nice Hershey, because Hershey's nice. The area that I grew up in is not so nice.
I want to give a shout out to one of our great Philly friends, the director of the Governor's Advisory Commission on Latino Affairs, Luz Colon. She's from Philadelphia, recently relocated to Central PA. And we were talking, I think you got to come to the show. Well, I don't live in Philly anymore. I live around Harrisburg. I said, that's right, you moved to the boondocks. And she was like, dang, you from North Philly. You talk about boondocks, boonies. And my Chicago friends, my homies like Rudy Lopez, all my wonderful Chicago friends, some are watching right now. When they move out of the hood and go to like Indiana or Wisconsin, or they say it's the sticks.
I mean, it's kind of people say that as well about Central Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
like
well, people in Central Pennsylvania do say that.
A bunch of other things. I mean, of course not.
Yeah.
They think they're a city, and there's only 147,000 in the whole county. So,
yes.
No, I get that.
Sprawling metropolis. And it's been a wonderful show. In this section, we're going to hear about Demi Lovato, 21 Savage in a second. But right now, we're going to stack them 20s.
He's making it rain in the studio.
Making it rain.
Making it rain.
I don't have change. Before anyone gets excited, these are not ones.
I mean, like good rain, not bad rain.
Yes.
Like inspirational.
Raining inspiration.
Yeah.
So the reason I got my cash, we got some cash here, is that the Stacking 20s segment of Ray's Latino Talk podcast and the What's Next show on WPPM is dedicated to the 2020 presidential race.
That's right.
And everyone knows, my loyal listeners, and my new co-host is going to learn this.
I'm going to learn real quick.
That my great-grandmother de Caguas, Puerto Rico, was a curandera. So I tap into her, Doña Paula Bermudez. That there's a little part of me that's like got that spiritual vibe. I can see in the future. It's like I know what's happening in politics in 6 months. So that's why you got to listen now so you can see the future, because we have that spirit here at Ray's Talk Show.
No, absolutely. And for those of you tuning in, I just want you to know that Ray is talking with his hands like a true... He's bringing in the good juju vibes and the santerias.
So this is what we're going to do.
The santerianas.
So this is what we're going to do. We are stacking... We are literally stacking the 20s.
Where's it going?
So... every 20 that we're going to have on the show is going to represent, that we're going to stack here on the show, and if you're watching on Facebook Live, is going to represent every candidate that has declared that they're going to be for president. All the money at the end of this process that we raise, now it's not just going to be this money, and then we're going to try to raise other money, is going to go to the effort of our dear friend who was on the show a few weeks ago, Cristina Rivera, who's founding her nonprofit organization, Love Should Not Hurt.
Yes, it's an organization in regards to helping survivors and victims of domestic violence. As we know, domestic violence is one of the leading causes of death for women in the United States. And when there's a firearm in the house, it's pretty much escalates to 500% chance of there being, unfortunately, some type of violence or casualties surrounding domestic violence. So be sure to check out Love Shouldn't Hurt. And, this is for an excellent cause. And I was so pumped when Ray brought this to me, because
that's right.
It's all about women empowerment.
That's right.
And not just women, men also are victims and survivors.
And that's going to be our our main charity that we're going to support this year here on the podcast and the talk show. And so let's start stacking them. So let's start listing who's already declared, Yaya.
El presidente.
Yes, Donald Trump has declared. Bam! That's 20 right there. Who else has declared?
Kamala Harris.
Kamala. You want to make her Puerto Rican.
Kamala
Harris. Ese va a ser los dominicanas. Yo voy a votar para la Camila. Boom. Who else? Talk to me.
Kamala Harris. Okay, let me fix that. Okay, so we have John Delaney.
People don't even know about John Delaney, congressman out of Maryland. That's right. We're going to put up a 20 for John with his little... He may not get 20 votes, but we're going to put 20 down for Christina.
Boom. He'll get write-in votes. It'll be neat.
There you go. All right, next one.
So I got... I can't even understand my own handwriting on this one. I got Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard. Shady Tulsi. We'll talk about her later. I talked about her last week. She's shady. Congresswoman out of Hawaii. She had a very bad on Morning Joe this morning. Woo, shaky. She could not clearly distance herself from the Syrian president Assad. It was shady. She's shady. All right, break it down.
Kirsten Gillibrand.
You said it correctly. Very nice. Kirsten Gillibrand.
I'm working.
I'm going to say this about Kirsten.
I said it right.
No. I'm talking about my analysis of her. I'm going to give you my analysis. Nobody in my crowd was really feeling her. The whole New York thing. She used to be a conservative upstate. Now she's woke, supposedly. I thought her announcement and her initial foray has been pretty good. I have to give her credit.
True.
I'm just breaking down my analysis. And I think that whole being a mom and her little kind of like non-threatening little vibe.
I call it like lollygagging.
Yeah, but I have to give her credit. I think she's come out stronger than the press is giving her credit for. That's Kristen. Give her 20.
All right, I got...
Who else she got, girl?
Elizabeth.
A very strong one. Maybe this one should be like a 20 pounds. So she's up there.
Wait, and we have the one to do it last.
No, you're missing one.
Wait, what am I saying?
You missed the Latino guy, Julian Castro. You forgot about him.
I didn't even write him down. Oh
Bendito
God.
Julian, bendito. You didn't even write him down.
I know.
You know,
this is so bad. I can't keep up with all these people.
I only have pictures with two of them, and he's one of them. We're going to use them a lot on our social media.
Oh, wait, and then we have the last one. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I have another 20 in my pocket for Pete Buttigieg, but this is he also a guy that's come out pretty well. All right, the last one we're going to put down for now. Who is it? Our homie.
Cory Booker.
A New Jersey senator, one of my senators, Cory Booker, who I refer to as Cory because I know Cory. All right, boom. All right.
We were just so that we're clear, the listeners and those on Facebook, I was like, Booker, Senator Booker. He's like, yeah, Cory, like Cory, like name dropping.
I've been rolling in the hood with Cory since 2001 into bricks. People don't know about Carlos Valentino. I know some of my Newark people are watching.
I'm like,
come on now, we know about Cory. So what do you? Yeah. Let me ask you before I get into my analysis. What's your initial thoughts about Cory? You're someone that's watching this. So let's start with this because you weren't on the last show when we started the 2020 segment. Have you declared you have not declared your support for anyone particularly at this point?
No, I have not declared support for anybody yet because I just want to kind of like watch the playing field.
Neither have I.
Yeah, and I kind of want to see. I'm really interested to see this whole. Not controversy, but talks about, Joe Biden running, all these other people who've ran before who are running again. I'm really curious to see how that's going to turn out.
It is interesting.
I'm curious to see how some of these ballots may turn out come, next year. I'm really interested in that. So I'm not going to proclaim my love to anybody because, I'm still in therapy over the last election.
Yes. And it's pretty early. I mean, we're not going to vote here for another 15 months here.
Yeah,
in these
and we're not going to vote
country.
anytime soon, but I really do think it's important. I mean, even Ray schooled me on this coming in. I was like, man, I didn't realize all these people already declared. And I'm like, oh my God, because, you hear about the Cory Bookers and Elizabeth Warrens and the Harrises of the world. You don't really hear about all the other people that kind of fly under the radar. But I think it's important for people to do their research and look at who's running and what they bring to the table and what values. Because at the end of the day, we're their constituents. And even if you believe in somebody, I mean, you're a part of the movement. People have a lot of power in regards to advocacy and voting. But most importantly, votes. But I'm telling you, I'm not in love with anybody quite yet. I'm gonna be very patient.
That's fine.
Because I was like, Bernie, Hillary, and then I was like, put Bernie in. They put Hillary, and I was like, Hillary, and then Donald Trump.
Exactly. So I would say this, and we'll talk about Cory because he's the last one. I did the segment. If you want to hear my breakdown on the initial set of candidates, you can listen to last week's episode, the first edition of 2020, which was exclusively on the podcast version. I broke down my initial thoughts about Warren, Gillibrand, Castro, and that crowd. And so we're going to keep talking about those folks. But I would say this, that I think you're right, Yaya. You have a good approach. I know some friends of mine, especially Camel. There's some people that are already out front with her, which is great. If you for Julian,
she's super fierce, and I'm kind of disappointed I said her name wrong. But
that's okay.
Look,
I've
been watching her.
She's a very competent woman, obviously. Yeah.
No, she is. I mean, it's hard for me. Like I say, I feel like there's so many good and bad things that every politician brings. I feel like that's just the nature of the game.
Perfect.
Nobody's perfect, but it made me really happy to be a woman of color. To see one of the standing people to come up was her, like from the gate, and how she did it in the presentation and. it was just beautiful. I mean, it was really encouraging.
She had the most impressive,
like the whole package. And
beginning for sure. Yeah,
and
aesthetically.
I mean, the one thing I will say, what's really encouraging about that is encouraging our young Black and brown girls and young girls in general,
absolutely,
to understand that their voice is important and they will be heard, and hard work does pay off. I mean, if you see how she's gone through politics, I mean, it's very impressive everything she's done, and it's for me, it's admirable to see a woman and a woman of color to do that. I mean, it gets me pretty pumped.
Absolutely. No, and,
so it's
and her
to see people,
her candidacy is going to highlight a lot of good things. Going to highlight the power of HBCUs, being a Howard graduate.
Yeah.
Highlight the power of particularly black women's sororities.
Yeah.
Her being AKA, I believe she is.
I honestly,
forget
I'm not very good at
Yeah, but anyway, but she's very proud of her Greek roots, her black Greek roots, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And strong group of women that are supporting her, which is great. The fact that she's not only African American but an Indian American. The fact that first prominent Asian American candidate. It's a wonderful part of our country, the Indian and Asian American population. So look, it's all good. What I said on last week's show, I still believe, which is, if you sort of graded them from like superhero characters in your Sega game, she would probably be the strongest. She'd have all the weapons and the crossbows, and she could do flips. But it's about, is she the right candidate for the right time? And retail politics, the fundraising, honestly, the media framing, which right now is on her side, but they're going to go through they're going to want it to be a novella, right? So in a month they'll dog her and they'll say Elizabeth's the bomb, and they'll dog somebody else, and there'll be a scandal for somebody else. So it's going to be a winding road.
But the one thing I do want to point out, especially with politics and women, can we hear about the legislation and the things that she's doing and not what she's wearing and how she looks? Because, I mean, when we talk about the presidential election last time, the one thing that was very discouraging for me was that Hillary's appearance and how her hair was cut and her suits, and she wears it's just like, what they wear should be of course, look business professional, look like a politician, of course, but listen to what she has to say before discussing how she looks. I have a little bit pet peeve about that with politics. We have people that look sloppy on both lanes. I'm not gonna point anybody out. It's just listen to what they have to say and treat them like a human being, and stop saying, I don't like the color of her lipstick and her hair is straight. Like, just stop.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and we could totally, Democrats and progressives and really Americans could drive ourselves crazy nitpicking at all these folks, nitpicking at each other, having these fights along ideology or positioning, and the reality is, the most important thing is almost certainly someone very competent, and who almost certainly would be a good president, if not even a very good or excellent president, will come out of the Democratic field. And we have to have an intelligent conversation. Really look at all the candidates. I would encourage people.
Look at all the candidates.
Don't just say, well, I'm a certain ideology, or I'm looking for someone that fits this type, or I need a white guy that's kind of okay with the Midwest because that could be Trump. Really listen, and really the most important thing for us to do is to elect the best candidate. And if we focus on that, then we're going to come out with the person that we can all stand behind and ultimately would be the best leader, and she hasn't declared, she most likely won't run for president. But if anyone was watching last night, and we'll talk in the next segment about the State of the Union, the Democratic rebuttal with Stacey Abrams, the former minority speaker in the Georgia legislature and the former Democratic candidate for governor, that's a leader. That's someone that can run something. That's right. And so I think we need to focus on the substance, the track record, and, the things that matter to us, authenticity. Consistency. That's right.
And I just want to point out to
ethics.
Ethics. And I would just want to point out to our listeners and viewers, don't forget, here in Philadelphia, there's a huge election this year. Right. And what we have to acknowledge, that presidential election is very important, but where you live is even more important. So local elections are huge, and there's a lot happening in Pennsylvania. So I just want to encourage people, yes, look for your candidates on a presidential level, but also on a local level, because those on a local and state level, that's just as crucial as the president. So I just wanted to just throw that in there.
Oh, yeah. We'll have plenty of time to talk about our local elections, and there's a lot of elections. People think, it's an odd-numbered year, but there's a lot of elections, big mayor's races around the country. Obviously, even in your part of the state, of course, we have people running for city council and school boards and mayors in cities like Allentown and Reading and Lancaster. Can be very important for our community in the state level. And again, you're listening to Ray's Talk Show, What's Next, with your hosts, Ray Collazo and Yaya, Rivera. Quickly on Cory Booker. And of course, I refer to him affectionately because we've known Cory a long time in his days in Newark City Council Central Ward, and our friends up there in Newark. But the bottom line is that I guess from a, kind of positioning perspective, he's positioning himself as a progressive, particularly around civil rights issues, that is business friendly enough that potentially could garner some more bipartisan or more moderate support. I think there's the two pushbacks on Cory. I think have been initially from people that, from an ideological purity perspective, feel like a little too corporate for them. And also, and I just want to be as real as we can about this, the fact that we're even talking about his personal life is problematic because it's coming up and there's speculation. Is he dating Rosario Dawson? Why is he, he's single? He says on the Tom Joyner Morning Show, I got a boo, but I don't really talk about my personal life. And so the bottom line is this: people's personal life really is nobody's goddamn business. And, the other thing is that, and I just want to be completely honest about it, is that simply because he's a single man of a certain age or a single person of a certain age, and the fact that for some people, that makes people question his sexuality, and the fact that they're questioning it makes people feel uncomfortable. There is a part of people that there's a certain level of mistrust that they have of him. I think maybe part of it because they may suspect he's LGBT, but the fact that they don't know and there's just like mystery around it, it's interesting.
Matter? Like, I feel exactly. Like the most important dynamic is that if he's single, not single, if he's how he identifies, whoever he's with, whoever he loves, I feel that it's his business. But for long in the American culture, the partner of a candidate means so much, almost more at times than the person running it. It's like, that should have nothing to do with it. If they're doing good policy and they're a reasonable human being, then who they're with and how they identify shouldn't mean anything. But unfortunately, we live in a time and age where I feel that certain ways of living and religions are just stuffed down people's throat and like, that's the right way, that's the right way, that's the right way. And in reality, if Cory Booker does an excellent job in great legislation, I don't care who he's with.
That's right.
I really don't care.
And everyone's different. Like, some people are very open, whether social media with their friends. They had 2 good dates and they're telling all their friends about it. And then some people, like, you don't know who they're with until you get the marriage invitation. Like, literally, like, everyone's got a different vibe.
That's how me and my fiance were. I just want everybody to know that nobody knew that we were quote unquote official because, people think like, oh, if you're on Facebook and you say you're with each other, it's like, it's official. We call it Facebook official. Like,
I like that.
They call it Facebook official, but like, we said that we got engaged after 4.5 years of dating and people are like, oh, so like it's official. It's like, no, we had a mortgage before that. So I'm pretty sure that's what makes it official.
We got the mortgage before the wedding. You're right. That's the commitment. There's no question about that.
But I mean, like, I feel like people are so quick to label and do things. Just take it easy.
And the bottom line is that we can nitpick on these little things, and the bottom line is people need to hear him out and let him address some of those concerns. I'll say this: I think just strictly from a political punditry perspective, Cory's going to do well. And I'm going to tell you why Cory's going to do well. Cory, I doubt that any of these people. I've seen him in person in the streets. I've seen him kicking it in the bodega. I've seen him kicking it. You all obviously see him on those very elite levels, anywhere in between. Cory's a heck of a campaigner. And Cory, ain't nobody going to work Cory. I mean, he may not win, but it's not because of a lack of work ethic. Working hard, building bridges. He's a tremendous retail politician. I've never seen Kamala in action. Obviously, it seems like Elizabeth Warren is very comfortable campaigning. There's a lot of these people. It remains to be seen. But Cory is gonna pull out all the stops. He's a likable guy. He's a genuinely good person. But we've got to hold him accountable to some of these things. I mean, the association with Facebook is not going to be a good one. People are concerned about his association with charter schools. So there's lots of things to question, and he's got to address those issues. But we wish all of them the best. But Yaya, we ain't going to talk about those people that won the Super Bowl, but something that went down in the middle of the Super Bowl Sunday night was not only was this issue that got triggered after the sad arrest of 21 Savage by ICE. And then Demi Lovato jumped into the Twitter frying pan.
Oh, man. Well, there was a couple things that happened with the 21 Savage. I know another person that's getting through the frying pan is Tomi Lahren. As we know, she has nothing positive to say, so we won't get into that. But the 21 Savage and Demi Lovato, firstly, I'm so disappointed, about how 21 Savage is being taken down. I actually listened to 21 Savage. Shout out to my best friend, Tony, who pretty much showed me me and my fiance and I 21 Savage, because he's really into hip hop and rap. I mean, 21 Savage is great, so it's kind of upsetting to see this is how he's going down. And it's not that he's going down, he's potentially being deported. So Demi Lovato had a tweet on Twitter that it was literally a firestorm, and I just wanted to quickly whip my phone out to read some of this because it got the topic about 21 Savage got savage. So Demi's original tweet was, so far 21 Savage memes have been my favorite part of the Super Bowl. Okay. So she tweeted that. She tweeted it, and it was literally so much backlash. I mean, I read the tweet before Ray and I even discussed this being a topic on the show today. I was talking to my fiance and I was like, oh my God, this is like awful. The things that they're saying to Demi Lovato, they were saying such crazy things, like that she got in a battle with Wale. And, let me just give you an example of some of the things that people were saying. It's like, go shoot some more heroin, Demi. She's a crackhead. Wonder if she saw the memes about her. Heroin addict, shake my head. Crack, is a drug, hell of a drug. F that crackhead. Demi always coming from a junkie. I mean, you guys get it. They came at her hard for saying that. Okay, so a lot of people ask me, what I think about it. I still really don't know what to think about it. The one thing I will say, though, being deported and how the United States is treating immigrants right now, in my opinion, is incredibly unacceptable. There's a lot of xenophobia. There's a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of incorrect information that is being spewed about immigrants. So I just want to say that first. So that's not cool. Everyone, it's like all BS aside, it's not cool joking about being deported, especially when I know through professional and professional and personal experience the type of dynamic and beauty that immigrants bring to this nation. So we'll just say that. So why did Demi do it? I can't answer that. Only Demi can answer that. So I think that she was trying to make light or be funny about a situation that's not funny. Okay, let's just be clear. That's the way I saw it. And she got backfire for it. The things that people said, though, I mean, was it necessary? I can't answer that either. So I've kind of been back and forth on it.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, there's a lot of communications lessons here because, look, let's keep it real. We've all, whether it's watching a comedian or seeing a meme on your phone, we've all chuckled at something that was distasteful.
Yeah.
And how many times have I been with one of my brothers and my wife, and I'm like, and I'll say something like, I know this isn't really cool, and, but it is kind of funny and and in that kind of private moment with that context, you may share a joke that's kind of edgy, but you don't share it with your 45 million Twitter followers because they don't know that context.
No, because the thing is that the one thing that I've noticed with social media in general or texting or anything that's digital age, there's no tone, pitch,
that's right,
visual aspect to it. So
and nobody really knows you. They just know your celebrity.
Yeah. So I mean, the whole coming at her because she is, she has issues with substance abuse and she overdosed. I mean, that's not cool.
No.
But on the flip side, she did put herself in a position, I feel, to put herself in the limelight or like the phrase, don't go in the kitchen if you can't handle the heat type thing. It's
that's
like
right.
she almost put herself in a position, I feel, to, you have to be prepared for
that's
that.
That's right. And so, I hope Demi listens. Regardless of her, that whole situation, we still got her back in terms of her recovery. We've continued to be, and we certainly, I hope she can now be an advocate to help 21 Savage get released.
No, absolutely. And I hope that she's part of that movement and to learn from this. Because all we can do is learn from, like as we mentioned earlier with blackface and all these things, like people just have to learn from their mistakes and have to be transparent about it. And it's very devastating to see someone like 21 Savage being deported. And it's not cool. Like the whole situation is not cool. I think it's very petty. And people need to come to a common place of encouraging one another when we're down and stop, trampling on each other. So that's that. I'm like being like, I don't know, kumbaya today.
Yeah, I know. I thought she was going to be savaging to me. But, hey, it's a difficult situation. And, again, I want
to be honest.
And let me, going back to, that's why you got to watch now. Because before this was an issue in the black community, I'd say probably starting about a year and a half ago with the Haitian temporary protection status situation. Before... we were one of the first media outlets that really was highlighting within the immigration debate the issue of black immigrants and the challenge that black immigrants, whether they're Afro-Latinos from Central America, whether it's from East Africa, whether from the Caribbean, the challenge in particular that black immigrants have in this whole process, and oftentimes their voice is not heard enough. And it turns out one of the most prominent African Americans in the country was a black immigrant. Nobody knew. People were like, we never even heard him speak in a British accent. Nobody even was aware. Most people weren't of his heritage. So the fact that we were on top of this, that's why you got to watch, because we're on the we're right on the edge of these conversations. When we come back, Yaya, we're going to catch up on all the other headlines, the State of the Union, being Boricua, and everything else we missed. And the Listen to WPPM LP Philadelphia, 106.5 FM, people-powered media. Thank you so much for joining us. You're listening also to Ray's Latino Talk podcast, which you can download, subscribe anywhere. You can download a podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. The list goes on and on. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, for those listening to this, you're missing it because you got to check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Facebook Live when we're doing these shows. If you follow us on social media at Ray's Latino Talk at IG, and of course at Ray's Podcast on Twitter, and of course, Yaya, where can you find you on social media?
Yaya _Rivera_. So that's YAYA_Rivera RIVERA_. So and then you can find me anywhere. If you just Google Yaya Rivera,
Yaya from the hood. Yaya from the block.
You got me. Even Yaya Rivera Women's March. My Yaya Rivera montage. I'm pretty easy to find. Don't worry.
Montage with a 0. Thank you, Yaya. My host Yaya Rivera breaking it down for us here. But the Facebook Live audience is another wonderful experience. And I know there's so many people chomping at the bit to get to the Ray's Latino Talk podcast studios. I'm telling you, we're moving on up here at WPPM. We're going to have a lot of great friends. Jose, Belize, Yvette. You're going to squeeze in here very soon in the coming weeks. And Candy Caldera, so many people that we have in the queue. We're going to be arranging those schedules. In the final segment of the show, we got a lot of quick things we got to hit on. Yeah, we got to touch for a minute about the State of the Union, which I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stated best was a speech about someone that had no plan and no vision. So what was your take on, I know it was painful to go through last night for sure.
So I just want everybody to be clear. I didn't watch it live because
you have a life
by like 8. I mean, I know, like, don't make fun of me, but you know, I
was extraordinarily long.
I was up today at 4:17 in the morning, and then I did yoga, and my day starts early, so I was dead asleep. But I did go back today this morning. I looked at every article. Check out my Facebook page and Ray's. He did this great article on NPR, the NPR article that pretty much states, fact checking everything that he said. It wasn't saying that he was wrong, because a lot of people are like, oh, you're just trying to fact. No, it was just pretty much giving an answer or a little bit
context,
more context in regards to what he was saying. So I was reading a lot of things. Of course, everyone's calling it the FU Nancy Pelosi clap. That was kind of like
that seal clap, dog, like this. Yeah, and the thing is, I thought
she stood up like real slow.
She was real deliberate about it.
She was so it was petty, but I feel a little bit necessary. So that was a lot of memes about that. I just honestly, the two things that I just want to quickly touch on about the State of the Union, the two things that I was most discouraged. I don't want to use the word upset anymore because this man continues to be disappointing for many of us, or the majority actually, so I can say that. And the one thing that was disappointing was he had this whole segment about immigration. And I just want to state to those of you who are listening and tuning into Facebook, if you're not sure about immigration or what immigrants bring to the United States, I really encourage you just to do a basic, Google search about how immigrants bring to the nation. But the one thing that was really upsetting in regards to this is that one of the things that he says is, meanwhile, working class Americans are left to pay the price for mass illegal immigration, reduced jobs, lower wages, overburdened schools, hospitals, so you can't get in, and he continues to make immigration an issue about safety. Let's be serious, it's not. And like the input from, John Burnett, an NPR Southwest correspondent, stated, a respected 2016 report by the National Academy of Sciences showed that immigration, legal and illegal, does create an economic benefit for some native-born Americans, but this benefit is generated by reducing the wages of native-born workers, often the least educated and poorest. Okay, I'm just going to leave it there. But there is a economist that I follow. His name is Philippe Legrain, and he writes a lot of great, posts about the importance of immigration. So that's one. The consistency. He brought up the shooting in New York about the MS-13 and that whole mess. It's like, okay, like if we look at what the crisis, like the real things that are happening in the United States, it has nothing to do with immigration. It's the opioid crisis. It's the issues with mass shootings. And, and when they say, oh, immigration, like, I'm sick of hearing it. It's not true and it's a lie. So that's the first thing that I got, all in a bind over. And the second thing I quickly want to add is pre-existing conditions. He continues to say that he supports pre-existing conditions and pre-existing.
And then there's nothing in his policies that support that.
Absolutely nothing, because
he tried to repeal the Obamacare, which the principal policy was pre-existing conditions. If John McCain had done a thumbs up, there's people that would have already passed away because of that thumb.
No, 1,000%.
You know?
And not even just that.
People don't realize that.
And
not enough people.
No, not a lot of people, but the Trump's Justice Department already said that they're not going to defend it. And the lawsuit specifically argued that the law's pre-existing condition protections are unconstitutional. And recently in December, a Texas judge struck down the ACA as a whole. So it's slowly being, gutted on
That's
the
right.
national
And their
level.
administration's pushing this. And look, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, Yaya, and I summed it up on Facebook last night. I was on Twitter and Facebook really wilding about this yesterday. You can catch my commentary that was happening live if you go back to my social media streams. But, the way I summed it up was our president's message last night to the nation in front of the whole world was to white people that they're now living in this hellhole. And he's in charge of, and he's responsible for everything, because those were the two messages. You're totally under attack. This is a horrible country. It's because all these people of color are attacking you. And look at me, I'm nice. I even let some black people out of jail a little early, even though the sentence was way incredibly exorbitant. Because I'm nice, not because of anything that was just or anybody else.
Meanwhile, real quick, Ray, I didn't mean to cut you
off. No.
Honestly, like the crisis that we have in this country for black and brown boys and girls that are incarcerated, like literally, like there's tons of articles about how black men are, quote unquote, are missing because they're incarcerated, and it's the incarceration in many ways, in my opinion, is just new age slavery. Yeah, it's like, how are we going to oppress?
They did pass that. They did pass that bipartisan bill, which Senator Booker was a part of, and Van Jones and Kim Kardashian, these people and Jared Kushner, that addressed that to a small degree on the federal level that doesn't impact people in state or municipal incarceration. But the bottom line is that the entire message was focused on this fear, when in fact the issues related to the mass shootings, which is typically younger white males that are native born, and whether it relates to gun control, the opioid crisis. San Juan Mayor Carmen Yulín rightfully pointed out he did not utter the phrase Puerto Rico at all.
Never.
And that's an ongoing crisis that's impacting 4 million U.S. citizens and their families around the world.
And the death toll, death toll that he completely said wasn't real.
So then
it was like 10 people.
That's right. So then on the flip side, you then go to the Democratic rebuttal of Democratic political figure Stacey Abrams out of Georgia. And the setting, it's not all about her. She's with a very diverse, very optimistic-looking group of Americans. She's talking about a positive vision. She's actually talking about the things, whether you agree with her or not, she's actually talking about the things that are real issues. The opioid crisis you spoke about, voting rights, issues impacting education, student loans, K-12 education issues. So she's actually talking about things that matter, and are actually on people's minds in a very real way. So, again, I go back to this. It's almost like we're living in two worlds. There's this spiteful, hateful people, which, by the way, almost have all the power in this country. And then there's the rest of us that care about each other, generally happy or trying to be happy, and embrace multiculturalism, embrace our neighbors and friends, don't have this skepticism with each other or this ill will towards each other, and trying to make this work and trying to bridge these Americas that we're living in is kind of our ongoing challenge. Yaya, what else is up? What else is on your mind here on this as we wrap up this edition of Ray's Talk Show?
No, absolutely. And real quick, Ray, I just want to add to the end of what you just said about two Americas. I feel that I keep repeating this, and I feel a lot of the issues that are happening in this nation isn't an issue about politics, it's an issue about morality. I feel like we have to start, you said we need to start being, more human. And I feel too often we, when it comes to immigration and putting children in cages, they're immigrants. No, they're humans. They're human beings. People losing their lives in many instances when it comes to police brutality or violence or mass shootings or the opioid crisis.
That's
right. Millions that are dying. I mean, they're people. They're humans. They cared substantially in somebody's life. And just for one split second, put yourself in the position of those who are being attacked and just see it more of morality than politics, please. So.
That is such a good way of putting it, because as we sit here tonight on taping this episode on Wednesday evening, we still have thousands of young people that are incarcerated on the southern border.
That's right.
Many of which the U.S. government is throwing their hands up saying that they're not even sure how to retrieve them. Very disgraceful. Our brothers and sisters in the Brooklyn Federal Detention Facility, which I know has electricity. I don't know if it has heat yet, and running water. So I know we have some brothers and sisters that are in front of that facility right now, so that have been pepper sprayed and been treated very badly. So there's reports that they're getting attacked for speaking up as prisoners inside that facility. So much respect to our folks that are incarcerated. We care about you. We love you.
That's right.
And shout outs to our friends, on the subject of, our activism matters. We had on the show about a month ago, great New Jersey activist, Annelia Mejia, of the Working Families Organization. And through her efforts and efforts of scores of activists in the state of New Jersey, the governor just signed into law $15 minimum wage.
That's right.
1 million New Jerseyans just got a raise.
That's
Some of the
amazing.
people working at the McDonald's, working at Wawa, hardworking people who are just trying to live their lives, who weren't even making a livable wage, are now going to be able to move up the economic ladder because of those efforts. So our activism, people say, well, this won't make a difference no matter what you do. Our activism matters.
I mean, our activism matters in so many levels because if you look at our history before us, there's always a phrase that I like to say, that comes from a graphic novel, but it's, the government shouldn't be like, I can't even, I just had it in my head and I'm losing it. It's almost like, the government, people shouldn't be afraid of their government. The government should be afraid of their people. That's actually right. From V for Vendetta. That's the graphic novel. It took me a second to get it, but it's true. I mean, the people of this nation have so much power, and there's nations that Ray and I wouldn't even have the opportunity for freedom of speech and even to have this show, and we're here, and that's what makes America beautiful.
Exactly.
But to see how these activists are being treated when, you have white supremacists with tiki torches and, having nobody stepping on their loafers and people fighting for basic human rights, stating, okay, it's sub-zero temperatures and people are freezing. Yes, they may have committed crimes or, been wrongfully accused. Who knows? I'm not a judge and when I wasn't a part of any of those things.
But they have right to human treatment.
They're humans. Again, going back to treating other people like humans. How would you feel if you were in a cell and you were negative 20 degrees, you didn't have any running water, you didn't have electricity, you have no heat, and people are like, oh, well,
there's people that are awaiting trial. They haven't been convicted of anything yet.
Exactly.
Unbelievable. We didn't have time, and we'll get into this more next week. The fiscal board, COFINA, of the island of Puerto Rico, there was some judgments. There was some very controversial decisions. Actually, a federal judge actually sort of pushed back on some of that, saying that, from a legal perspective, Puerto Rico is being treated very much second-class citizenry. Wow, what a surprise. And so we'll get into that. We have to bring on some experts and really get into that deeper, so we will touch more about that next week. And, Yaya, one last thing. Being Boricua, being Black History Month, give someone any other thoughts about how we can celebrate who we are during this month?
Absolutely. I love music. I'm a huge Salsera fan. Bomba y Plena. Come on, guys. Listen to all the great Ismael Miranda. You have, Ray Barreto y Richie Cray and Bobby Cruz and everybody from the Feria.
There's some old school salsas. That's Puerto Rico getting it in.
La Sonora Ponceña.
Now we're talking. I was listening to them last night.
We're talking about Rafi Levy. Like all that music, the derivative in the background comes from African American, or African, not even American, African.
Very much Afro-Cuban, if you think about the song and
true.
That part of it.
The bomba y plena, the drums, the music, the dancing, the beauty, the people. I love it so much.
Absolutely. I love that music, and I was thinking about doing this show and thinking about Ismael Rivera, Sonero Mayor. So his greatest hit was really kind of like the Black Power song of his generation, Las Caras Lindas. Las Caras Lindas de mi gente negra. And, he meant so much, not only the salsa fans and Puerto Ricans, but really Afro-Latinos throughout the world through that song and his vision. And Bomba Plena was essentially slave resistance music.
Absolutely.
So if you're trying to understand, you don't feel connected to the Black experience, but you're Latino or maybe you're Mexican-American and learning more about the pride you have in some of the Caribbean Latino culture, take a moment to listen to those lyrics. That Colombian salsa classic, No Le Pega La Negra, is about a Black slave woman.
That's right. And I was just dancing to that in my car this morning, and
it's one of the classics.
And one of my, I know this artist isn't Puerto Rican, but he's one of my favorite, especially on the topic of slavery and colonization, is Ruben Blades. He has
El Panameño,
yes. But he does have a whole album, and one of his songs is Buscando America, and I feel like that
Ruben's
resonates so much today. So
one of the legends. That's a good way to wrap it up. Yaya, let people know where you can find you on social media.
Find me at Yaya_Rivera_. Again, Yaya_Rivera_. You can find me on all social media under that handle. And again, thank you, Ray, for having me, and for those of you who are listening.
Thank you for listening to What's Next on WPPM LP Philadelphia. Christina Vega wants to keep making it rain here for her organization. Love should hurt, support her, of course. And we look forward to coming back next week on Ray's Latino Talk Podcast.